let's talk about. Oh, hang on, I pressed the wrong button again. All right, here we go. So let me just switch the format real quick, and let's talk about Super Mario All Stars. So, a lot of this is going to be kind of winging it because I've never really covered a compilation on this show before. So I guess the simplest way to do it is to talk about each game by itself, and then we can just talk about the compilation as a whole. So let's start with Super Mario Brothers, the Super Nintendo remake of Super Mario Brothers. So, as we covered during our gameplay, the physics was definitely quite different compared to the original, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing if you're like more familiar with the original, and then going into that you have to like, I guess, kind of relearn your muscle memory because now you have to learn the physics of this game. But if you're someone who has never really played the original one too heavily, didn't get that muscle memory, or if this is your first time playing the original altogether, then it's something you'll get used to immediately because again, it's just is different. But aside from the technical difficult differences, the game itself, this is just a significantly better looking version of the game. Like again, the 8-bit original has its own charm for sure. It's more recognizable, but this game is just like, what can you say? This is a 16-bit version. They have backgrounds. The music is improved. Enemies are colored. Everything looks just really pretty. It's just like, again, if Super Mario Brothers Deluxe for the Game Boy Color didn't exist, I would call this the definitive version just because of how beautiful it looks. I think what I would really like, and this is a little side mini tangent, I would love it if they would just release a Super Mario Brothers Deluxe that had the versions of ability to look like this. I would really dig that a lot, honestly. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's Super Mario Brothers original. Much like I said in season 1 of the show, it's a classic game that's still very much fun to play. And besides the graphic improvement, I feel like there's a lot of little quality life improvements. Like you won't get out. There's checkpoints, which we notice. Sure. You won't get ousted right away all the way at the beginning of the game for losing. You just go back to the beginning of the world. And if you use suspend points, you may not even have to deal with that. If it's a don't want to worry about that time sink, or maybe you do. But what's your thoughts? Super Mario Bros. Original.
So now that we've played a little sample of all of them, and we're stepping back, I think my biggest takeaway applies across all of the games. But this really is, I think, a cleaned up and close to definitive way to play some platformers that are still timeless today. I think that turning, especially to Mario 1 and Mario 3, but talking specifically about Mario 1, there's just such elegant level design, and that's what stands out to me still. Like you mentioned, you gotta get attuned to the physics again, because it's a different feel for these games. But that different feel, I think when you get into it, you can appreciate just how precise the design is, and then you can appreciate how great this overhaul is. I was really impressed and excited going back to this, and I think a little bit later, maybe this weekend, I'm gonna go back in and clean up Mario 1 and finish it, just because it's so playable today. I think that's the biggest thing about All Stars. They're just so playable still.
Honestly, yes, I 100% agree. Yeah, that's our thoughts on the original Super Mario Brothers, timeless classic that just looks even better than it ever has. So moving on to the Lost Levels. Now, a lot of what we just said about Super Mario Brothers applies to Lost Levels as well, because, again, better performance, slightly different physics. So we're talking more about the game itself, and, it's just a much more difficult version of Super Mario Brothers, where the level design is just much harder, enemies are designed, but again, it's the same core level design itself. Same core gameplay is what I meant to say.
Okay.
And, they eschew the 2-player mode to instead have two different difficulties, not difficulties, but two different options where you can play as Mario or Luigi, and they each control a little bit differently. But of course, on Switch, that's not even a big deal anyway, because you can, like we did, swap between between lives or even between levels, however is more convenient for you as a player. And that's the good thing about just the Switch service in general, with both the NES and the Super Nintendo games in general, is that even single player games can be turned into 2-player games if you just know when to switch it effectively. I remember when the Super Nintendo app first came out, myself and Christy, another one of the writers of our website, we did a stream where we were just playing Super Nintendo games, and we were playing Link to the Past as a 2-player game, where we would just go, if I died, she would take control, or if she died, I would take control and just kind of swap between as we were going. Or if one of us was playing for too long, we would just give the other a chance to play. And that's the one way you can do that. And it's the same thing with this game. With Lost Levels, you can swap between to make the progress on the game. And again, it's Lost Levels, so you will die a lot. So maybe depending on how willing you are to like keep switching control, that could be your way to do it. And Mario and Luigi gives you different options in that regard. I guess based on the only downside, and this is not necessarily a fault of the game itself, it's just how it was designed, is that Mario and Luigi are not swappable mid levels. Once you commit to that, it's almost like a campaign in a way. Like once you choose the Mario game, you're in the Mario game. That's not as much of an issue because there's like 4 different save files where you can just like fully experience that either way. But if you're looking to like switch between to what makes it easier for you, the game does not do that. And that, I think that's less of a flaw, maybe just the way the game was designed too.
Sure.
So yeah, what do you think?
Well, I think again, my thoughts on this one are a little bit more surface level, as it's the one in the collection I'm least familiar with prior to playing with you today. But this is certainly the game that benefits the most from the package that is All Stars itself. I think having those affordances like checkpoints, having the cleanup visuals, I think that really benefits a game that's built on arguably a weaker foundation in comparison to a lot of other 2D Mario titles. So I think this is the best context to try to experience Lost Levels through. And I think if I ever feel compelled to push all the way through that game, this is how I would do it. But at the same time, already I was playing and doing just some strange things, those springs that sent me to
the moon.
The moon, who knows, there's things here that just don't feel as refined as the original Mario, but like we've just been kind of, the drum we've been beating about All Stars just being this incredible package and way to experience these classic titles, I think that holds true.
I agree. Yeah, it's I guess you're right a little bit on that like the mechanics are just like a tad different. On accounts of like the fact that there's a few new things that were in this game that weren't in the original, like those super springs, I guess I'm gonna call them, poison mushrooms, and other little things, just to help make the game a little bit more difficult. Like, yeah, and like you said, it's not quite as refined. But you know what I just noticed? This is off topic, but is that outfit that Mario's wearing on the cover, where he's wearing the top hat, was that in Odyssey?
Oh, I don't remember.
I feel like I've seen it somewhere else. And Odyssey had so many different costumes from all across Mario's history, so I have to look into that. I feel like I've seen it before. Anyway, getting back to the subject of Lost Levels. Yeah, there's not too much more to say about it. I'm echoing a lot of what I did say in Season 1, but it is really a much more difficult version of Mario. But like the original Mario Brothers, it's just further refined by the fact that it's on the Super Nintendo version. Sure. And I will say this as well. Like the original Super Mario Brothers that's on this collection, you have checkpoints. And unlike the first one, you start on that same level. You don't even go back to the world. Like if you died on Lost Audio World 5-3, you can start back in 5-3. You don't start from the checkpoint if you happen to get there. But that's hardly a punishment considering that you're still on the same level that you are on. So like to even out the fact that the game itself is harder, they made it that you can, as long as you're persistent enough, that you can eventually get through it. I think that's really nice. I think we're getting into an age where lives are kind of becoming outdated in a way.
Absolutely.
Where I do feel like a game can be difficult, can make you die a lot without necessarily like punishing you by sending you all the way back to stuff that you had already conquered. In that sense, I think there's some levels where I think it's a benefit to like send you back, but I think there's others where I think it's like it becomes tedious after a while. It's just it's the delicate balance of respecting a player's time, and I think for this game to be hard but still have the foresight to put you on that same level so you can keep going and just like push through the difficulty if you really want to. I think that's game design that's like way ahead of its time, and I actually appreciated it for that.
Yeah. I totally agree. And side note, I just booted up Odyssey. That costume is in the game. It's the black tuxedo and black top hat costume.
Nice. I knew I saw it somewhere else. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. That's a cool little Easter egg. Yeah. So that's Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels. So let's talk about Super Mario Brothers 2. Definitely the black sheep of this collection because it's a different game with Mario characters thrown in. But I owe a lot. This game it's an important game in the Mario series, despite it being so different, because it's the very first game where Peach and Toad were playable, and that shaped a lot of their identity going forward in later games too. Obviously, 3D World plus Bowser Fury just came out, and a lot of what they do in that game, it comes from Super Mario Brothers 2. Peach's ability to float. There's some levels where they can't throw the vegetables. It's not really that prevalent, but it's there. And the fact that Toad can't jump high, but he's very fast. That all comes from this game. This is the first time those two characters were playable, and it really did just kind of like shape them going forward. So it's a very important game. But if we're talking about the game itself, again, much better looking version than its NES predecessor. This is definitely a really good way to play it if you don't have access to the Super Mario Advance, which is just an even better version of that game. Actually, maybe that's debatable, because Super Mario Advance is easier than the Super Mario Brothers 2. They added some stuff to make it easier. So if you're a purist that just wants it a little bit difficult, then maybe this might still be the version for you. But I still prefer Advance. But either way, you can't go wrong with this version because it's tight. Like in my opinion, anyway. Yeah. As someone who did play through all of Super Mario Brothers 2, this version felt a lot tighter to me. Like I was able to throw much better as far as where I was going. It almost makes me want to go do the game again, but not quite enough because I haven't enough games to play right now that I'm not going to just do the same one, even in a better version. But no, if you've never played Super Mario Brothers 2, I think this is a really fun way to do it. It's a lot of fun. It's true to the original, but updated. Whereas Super Mario Advance, again, easier, and they even changed one of the bosses. Like, are you familiar with that boss that they changed?
No.
So, in the original Super Mario Brothers 2. There was now the mouse that throws bombs, and that's one of the bosses. They put him in the game twice. Actually, they put him in 3 times because he's was a boss in 2 levels, and then he was like a mini boss before the actual final boss. So for Super Mario Advance, they took out the second Mauser fight and instead put a new boss called Roberto, which is just a gigantic robotic Birdo that's really creepy sounding and really creepy looking, honestly. I'm glad that Nightmare Fuel never came back in another game. But I guess they did it to just give a more, let's give a different boss is what they were thinking, I'm sure. It's just a lot tougher version of Birdo, and again, glad that's never coming back ever, because that thing is really scary. Look up Roberto. It's not pleasant to look at. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this one. It's just a really good way to experience this game. It's very different, but I think it's still fun. Your thoughts?
So, on a subjective level, I feel like I hold the importance of Mario 2 USA in my enjoyment of it in equal regard, but they're different. I have never been a big fan of the gameplay style or the feel. I've put a little bit of time into various versions of it over my course of playing Nintendo titles, and it just never has really clicked with me. But like you're saying, as we've been echoing, this is perhaps the best version to try. And like you're saying, it has so much importance to Mario as a series on the whole, in terms of characters, in terms of gameplay ideas, visual motifs. There's a lot of interesting stuff here, and I mean, with how accessible it is now on Switch, it's certainly worth giving it a shot. So it's certainly one that people are going to have a divergent opinions on. And so if you're going to try a game that's more controversial, and same goes for Lost Levels, again, an accessible package like this is just the way to go.
Exactly. That's the great thing about this service, and you have the freedom to experiment with these games that you're not sure if you'd like or if you've never even heard of. And there's doing this series, there's certainly been a lot of games that if I knew how good they were, I would have happily paid extra money to play them by themselves. And there's games where I played, and I'm like, boy, I'm glad I didn't spend the money on this game. That is just part of this package that I already paid for manually. So there's that. It's definitely a game worth trying, especially mainly because of how different it is. Like, different games will always sway to different people, because if you're used to a certain series and then you find something that's like so different, you're either going to really be refreshed by how different it is, or it's just going to completely bounce off you and you just want to go back to what's familiar. And either opinion of that is quite frankly valid. But with this package, you do have the freedom to check this out. And if you really want retro, you can play the NES version, but this is definitely the version I would recommend, because again, it looks a lot better, sounds a lot better, and controls better than the NES version. So the last game we're going to talk about is the last game in this collection, and this is going to be, I guess, kind of like a two-part thing, Super Mario Brothers 3, because we stumbled into that battle mode, which we'll get its own separate thing in a second. But talking about just Super Mario Brothers 3 in itself, yeah. So a lot of people still to this day hold Super Mario Brothers 3 is their favorite 2D platformer. You know, it's held in high regard. There's still debates today over whether people prefer Super Mario Brothers 3 to Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. For me, my answer actually differs a little bit depending on which version we're talking about. If we're talking original Super Mario Brothers 3 versus Super Mario World, like the NES version, it's easily Super Mario World. The presentation of World, the platforming, the colors, and the Yoshi, all that good stuff puts the World above for me. But if we're talking about the Super Nintendo version of Brothers 3 or the Super Mario Advance 4 version of it, it's a different story. It's a lot harder for me to judge. I would kind of put Advance 4 / Super Nintendo Mario Bros. 3 a little bit higher, just because now that they're on equal footing in terms of that visual design and that level and colors, level and controls. I think I do prefer the Mario Brothers 3 level design just a little bit better, divorced from the graphics in that regard. So coming to this version after doing a full playthrough of the NES original was refreshing. Because I did enjoy my time through Mario Brothers 3, but it was, you know, an NES game like that looked a lot better than its original Super Mario Brothers. There were still some technical issues as you went through the very end, but I saw a significantly less version of that when we were playing this Super Nintendo version and seeing all the different power-ups. We also breezed through it, so it like I could say that it felt very natural to play. Like when's the last time you played Super Mario Bros. 3 for context? Any version?
So the last time I played was like early 2020, the NES version.
Okay,
so
okay.
Yeah.
So for me, it's definitely a bit more recent after finishing that playthrough. I finished that in January, so we're talking only 2 months ago. Sure. And coming to this one, it definitely just feels so much better. Like it's so much more polished. This and again, Super Mario Advance 4 are the definitive ways to play Mario Brothers 3. In fact, I feel like the World versus Mario Bros. 3 compares and played this version, I think it would make those arguments much more interesting, because then we're on near parity at that point. If you're a Yoshi fan, you're still going to prefer World, but that's another thing entirely. But no, I really enjoyed coming back to this with its improvements. It's a very, very good looking Mario game, and it rubs me the right way. But what are you thinking?
So I also hold Mario 3 in very high regard. I prefer it to World personally. I like the way those mechanics feel a little bit more in the physics and everything. But this is just, if you want to talk about Mario 1 being timeless, get rid of it. Look at Mario 3. It's just night and day.
For sure.
Mario 3 is just such a special platform, and of course everything we've already said about All Stars as a whole applies to this. But if you want to talk about, does the game hold up? A few things hold up as well as Mario 3 does, and returning to this now is just such a clear reminder of that.
Oh, without a doubt, and it's a game that even the NES original, for its flaws, is definitely held up like very well. And we're talking about a version of that that's even better. Yeah, of course it does. It does. It's a very faithful remake that just manages to improve a lot of things in wonderful ways, and I'm very happy about it. And one way that it really improved upon things was adding a damn battle mode based on the original Mario Brothers. So that's going to be our segue into that battle mode. Oh my god. Okay, so let's be clear. Mario Brothers Original, it's fun. It's a fun multiplayer game in short bursts, right? Like you could especially if you're playing like the NES version that's on the Switch app. It's fun in short bursts, but you do kind of notice how the controls weren't quite up to snuff in the original Mario Brothers. Like there's definitely a bit of a sluggish feeling to it, and going to the jumping and whatnot. But I always gave that game props for being such an early game that have that synchronized head-to-head multiplayer together, which just didn't exist at that time that game came out, and I always respect it for doing that. And today's standards, of course, I don't know if it held up as well, but it still at least can be fun to play in short bursts. But if we're talking about this version that's here in Super Mario All-Stars, that's available in the Super Mario Bros. 3, this is significantly better. This
Yeah.
one is definitely more competitive than the original. That one was, I mean, you competed in the original too, but you definitely also were trying to work together to get as far as you can in that arcade game. This is definitely, you're out to get your opponent. You're either going to want to collect the coins first, or you want to survive. Because if one person dies, then the other person automatically wins. You go on for 10 rounds. And the 10 rounds will take you about 10 minutes to complete. So it's a nice little quick session, but you'll have a lot of fun doing so. You dodge enemies, you try to knock them out, collect the coins, or try to take your opponent out. So you can do either. You can either be aggressive, try to go after your opponent, send the enemies their way, basically kind of lure them there, or hit them with a turtle shell, or you can just try to get the coins as fast as possible and and hope either your opponent makes a mistake and dies, or you get the coins first and then win anyway. So I like that there's a lot of different strategies you can use in this relatively simple game. It's the definitive way to play Mario Brothers because it's still, the control isn't perfect, like we both agree, but it was still significantly miles and better than the original Mario Brothers. It almost, I would say, it invalidates the original Mario Brothers in a way because you can still play this online, and you know, you're going head to head, and there's just more there, more strategy. It's a lot better to look at too, because this is a Super Nintendo versus an arcade '80s game.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it almost makes me want to go back and say, oh no, Mario Brothers isn't holding because this exists, almost.
Yeah.
But you know, what do you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, I had so much fun in our entire evening playing together, but this was the highlight. This was such a fun little thing to find because I had never experienced this before, and like you're saying, it really was so much better than that original Mario Brothers experience. I still have issues with that core movement a little bit. I still have some problems with, you know, a lot of enemies to knock out, but I thought there'd be more of a factor of your score opposed to just collecting coins. But on the whole, it really was, it was a fun way to experience that Mario Brothers gameplay. And like you're saying, just having a synchronous multiplayer experience like that was so rare for the time, and it's still so fun today. So I think that was a great end cap to what we played today.
Agreed. And it's also a great end cap because it was a surprise, because I didn't realize that was a part of the Mario Brothers 3 as part of the All-Stars collection. That's what I was talking about, man. This series offers so many nice little surprises, stuff that you didn't know, and then you end up absolutely loving. And I'm glad that we got to end that on a nice surprise. So before we do our outros, let's talk about the package overall, now that we've given our thoughts on the individual games within it. So I said this at the beginning of the stream, before we started even playing this game, that Nintendo releasing a lavish collection like this is rare these days, apart from like an anniversary, that is. So for them to just out of the blue take their 4 best-selling NES games and just put them in a nice collection and update them for the Super Nintendo graphics they're on. They could have just put them as NES game, or I don't know if that. Yeah. I'm not a huge tech person, so I don't know if they did that by necessity or whatnot. But even so, they update them so they can have the 16-bit graphics on the Super Nintendo to look better, sound better, and in some cases even control better. Or in the case of Mario Bros. 3, add a mode that just improves the game overall. It's just such a lavish collection, and it's far and beyond holds up for having just so much value. And the fact that people can play this on their Switch without even have to, somehow for your Nintendo Switch online fee, essentially get for free for the classic Mario games in one collection with a nice battle mode that you can even play with a friend. That's really fun. Dude, yeah, of course it's awesome. Abram, tell me something.
So everything you said is absolutely correct, and I feel like if you're talking about a series where the concept is, does the game hold up, and you're talking about Mario All Stars, the episode does itself. This game is just so good, and it makes me have to give a disapproving head shake towards 3D All Stars, because that's a great collection by its own merit. But when you look at what Nintendo did here, just night and day. I mean, this was such a thoughtful revision of already some of the industry's best games. And so it's just such an essential package. And it was harder to get your hands on, so the fact that it's on NSO is really great. And that's about my thoughts, because there's only so much you can say about Super Mario All-Stars. It really is a defining game. People tend to not include it in best of lists because it's kind of a cheat. It's a compilation. Sure. But if you're thinking, what are the best cartridges the best of video game cartridges. This is in the top. This is in top 10 easily.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
Easily. Yeah, it's just an insane collection. It's just so lavish, so wonderfully done. I'm just so happy that there's a nice, easy, concise way for people to access the Mario games in this fashion. Yeah, I'm glad that we did this on Mario. I was looking for an excuse to do this game anyway for season 2. I mean, I was going to, but to do it on Mario Day in particular, I think it's a good way to celebrate by playing one of the best video game collections out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, All Stars. This was all a scam, people. We just really wanted to play All Stars together. Of course, this game was going to hold up. There was no mystery here. I can tell you, Abram, every 2 days after I do one of these streams, I upload the video on your YouTube and I upload the highlights. And sometimes I like to keep the people in suspense because, especially if it's a game they haven't heard of, it's like, this game is that. But does it hold up today? This is one of the few games where I'm going to be like, you already know. Just listen to our thoughts and Harris gush about Mario. Yeah. Like who's gonna believe for a second that this collection of 4 Mario games didn't hold up? Like, no, these games suck. Shut it down. Absolutely. Anyway, that was our thoughts on Super Mario All